This is Negotiate X TV.
Welcome to the Negotiate X podcast. I am your co-host and co-founder, Nolan Martin. With me today is Aram, but also Aram, we have an incredible guest to introduce, and that's Bryan Rodriquez. Bryan, thank you so much for joining us for today's podcast, man. We're excited to talk about real estate and negotiations.
No, awesome. I'm so honored to be here. I'm so blessed to be here. Definitely to be with my former professor at West Point in negotiation. So I feel like I'm back in class and ready to take a WPR, and so a little nervous, but it's more excitement, you know.
You're not sweating enough to feel like we're really back in class there, Bryan.
I mean, I got bald head, so you can probably see me glistening and stuff, you know.
I'll kick it over to Aram. Aram, if you want to introduce Bryan, I know that y'all have a much deeper relationship that goes back.
Oh yeah, our relationship goes back now over a decade, Bryan. We're getting old, right? 2009, we're getting ready to launch the West Point Negotiation Project, which has now been around for 13 years. Can you believe that? And we're Jeff Weiss and myself are launching this endeavor at the encouragement of a lot of different folks who've been out on deployments. Said, hey, we need a broader reach to the military in terms of negotiation and influence skills. And so we looked around at what was called the MG 390 course at West Point, Negotiation for Leaders course. And we reached out to the current students and we said, hey, would any of you willing to help us? And we had, 3, 4, maybe 5 students say, yeah, well, we're willing to take this on. Now, remember, this is primarily second semester firsties. And anyone who has ever been in the last semester of a 4-year program or any sort of program, you tell me, how much energy and excitement do you have to put anything else new on the plate, right? And that in itself will tell you about Bryan and his classmates who said, yeah, we'll help you out, get this thing started. And I've got so many fond memories of you, Bryan. I'll say this, as we get ready to just kind of get to talk about where you are and what you're doing, I will say this. What impressed me the most was your work ethic. Okay. You were always willing to outwork the person next to you. Your willingness to try something new. And like, if I remember right, were you a football player? Yeah. Football player, man. What was your management major as well? Yeah. And yet, what did we ask you to do as we were launching the project? We asked Bryan to create a graphic, a logo for the project, which you did, which you went and did, and that's evolved since then. Okay, but you created their first one, and then you were also one of our key spokespersons at the conference the Global Leadership Conference where we kind of launched the project entirely. You were one of the key spokespersons. So those are a couple memories I have of you. Great to have you on. Thanks for joining us.
No, it's such a pleasure to hear that. It just demonstrates like leaders give other leaders opportunities to grow. And that's what you did. And I'm always going to be grateful and thankful. I'm going to give you 100% every time you call my name. So thank you.
Well, if we can kick this off and Bryan, so kind of just past the negotiations course, obviously let's start with your military career. How did negotiations kind of play a factor in the early part of your career just out of school? And then we'll transition into what you're doing today.
Yeah. So, I finished West Point in 2009, right? And I go to the Ordnance branch. And so that's a regiment of the multifunctional logistician branch. So first you're assuming that it's going to be just Excel, right? You're just forecasting and doing planning factors. And though it was, I definitely I would say thankfully, I got an array of different experiences. And so literally like on my first deployment right out the gate in 2010, I was deployed to Kirkuk, Iraq in Kurdistan. And what was interesting there is I went as a maintenance platoon leader, and literally a week before I got chosen to fall in with my platoon of logisticians to fall into Bravo Company 212 Infantry. And so I had to become a maneuver platoon leader. So immediately right there, you're just like, wait a minute, there's immediate concerns here. We didn't really train like the infantry guys did for the mission, and all my personnel didn't branch that, right? So their motivation isn't there. So but by the grace of God, we did just fine doing like counter IDF, rolling QRF, checkpoints, seizing targets, close air support. I mean, even KLEs, right? Key leader engagements. And so there was just plenty of negotiations there, right? And convincing your personnel to do a job that they were not expecting, dealing with a commander that was not your branch and didn't trust you. So there was no relationship there, right? And I could go into depth and stuff. But yeah, I mean, every episode I've been in, it's always been a huge negotiation lesson. You don't really think about it, right? When you're in the moments, but when you're asked to do some critical thinking and reflection, it was all negotiation, So so I got I got that privilege and did an array of things. I even when I went to Afghanistan, I was able to be the first security force advised assist team. They're known as SFATs. So I was the first commander and one of the first commanders, and we were a guinea pig for the Army at the time, and now it's a full fledged. And I actually had to submit like our negotiations review back to one of your successors about the key leader engagements I've had as an SFAT in guiding the Afghan officials, et cetera. So yeah, it's been a part of the whole military, and just to answer that.
What I'm interested to jump into, Bryan, is kind of understanding how do we move beyond, or at least from the outside looking in, how do we move from beyond just a haggle over prices when it comes to real estate? I know we had kind of talked a little bit about the principled agent, so maybe we collaborate that in here, but really getting at, can you even understand interest and generate options from an agent's perspective when buying a real estate?
I am an associate broker, so that means I'm not a broker who employs agents, but my wife and I are associate brokers, and we own the Lana Rodriquez group. So that's a residential team. We do commercial. I could talk about that. But we service, we've been real blessed in servicing families since 2015. We've serviced over 1,200 families and almost $500 million in just principals, right, in selling real estate. So there's a lot of data points there that we've learned over the years. And then I've really leveraged our network, the Black and Gold Summit, I call it. It's a West Point conference for West Pointers by West Pointers, but it's just an example of what I always recommend people that, riches are in the niches. And so really focus on who you are. And I really double down on our community. And, here in Colorado Springs, I'm a huge advocate, and I really want to change the landscape. Yeah.
Bryan, it's just a great example of how these skills show up in any different sort of array of situations. As you think about, and to encapsulate your military career, kind of in one thing, sort of, but what, anything in particular jump out to you that, like, from a negotiation perspective, you stays with you today? And we'll get to the work that you're doing now, but is there something that kind of stays with you with everything you were talking about before, both with your kind of first deployment and then the second deployment? Any sort of single principle or idea that you kind of hold fast to?
No, definitely, because all these questions, we can go right into all these negotiation deep dives, right? And just to not get ahead of ourselves, I would think relationship and legitimacy. I think relationship and legitimacy are really decisive, really important in any industry, any negotiation that you're in. You're always dealing with individuals, with people, their personalities, but you're taking action, and that's whether you're communicating or demonstrating something. You always want to be legitimate as best you can. So those two principles really are consistent, and I'll talk about that obviously through this.
Yeah. Well, so let's start to transition there because we are really, our goal, well, we'd love to swap more war stories and talk about, we really want to talk about what you're doing now. So can you tell us how did you, okay, what was the transition point? When did you transition from the military? What's that looked like? And kind of what's this new field of real estate that you've gotten yourself into? And if you want to just say you rode your wife's coattails here, we all know that's true. So, anyways, go ahead.
I mean, I would say you always have to leverage your resources, right? And your relationships. But real estate was parallel, with me as a young lieutenant. And it started with Lana. Like I always say, Lana got me into buying real estate, and I got her into real estate service, so like sales. And it was funny when I first met her, she was buying her first property. And I was like, what are you doing? Parents buy houses, right? And I was just young and immature, but she really got me into that. And it just got the bug while I was in the career to understand how to leverage the VA loan, how to understand how to complement real estate as just another form of revenue, wealth building, so forth. And it got to the point where the big change was when my wife wanted to grow our family. And she's like, hey, I want a kid. And I was like, well, you got to go back to work and you need to be an agent. And so, because I knew she would do great. And like you said, riding the coattails of my wife, I mean, she was just like incredible. She like a bat out of hell, and she did a great job. And I really learned a lot, but at the same time, I was trying to be Hua and try to reach for the stars. But the business was pulling us out of the Army. And the Army's tough, right? To make it a career and make sure everything works in your favor, and you got to give a lot to the Army. So I had to call it quits, right? And I was a homeless veteran for a little bit, and then I got into the University of Denver because I really wanted to transition to become more of a professional, to be more legitimate in the eyes of people. So I got a master's of science in real estate, became a broker, and I just complemented my wife, and then eventually led into who I am and what I've started in real estate.
No, Bryan, I think those are great examples where I think that most folks, when we come up to real estate, it's like, well, obviously they just want to get more. And it sounds like there's and I love your phrase, chase the objection. What a great sort of concept. That there's more to it, whether it's around tax implications, whether it's around inheritance or what's going to happen to my estate. I mean, there are a lot of, I mean, you're getting into, especially when you start talking about their relationships and inheritance and estate. I mean, that's pretty deep sort of concerns that people are bringing to the table.
Yeah, so I'm wondering if we should get into the 7 elements of preparation tool, right? Sir, I had to bring this. I had to bring this on stage, right? So this is my notebook of the negotiations course that we took, and I have like literally everything in there. And
I'm gonna have to go back and change your grade
yeah,
to an
yeah,
A+ now,
I have
Bryan.
all the
Wow.
tabs and
All
everything.
right. Wow. No, Nolan, you're stuck with the C.
It's just one level up. But so it's interesting because I think we want to dive deeper into those elements. And one of the beautiful things about real estate is that there's always a timeline, right? And there's a pre-contract timeline. There's a contract. There's a timeline within the contract, and then there's a timeline post-closing. And that actually allows us to use that 7-element prep tool, and it makes it just so much more effective because you got a foundation to always reference, and it just helps get into those interests, options, legitimacy, alternatives, commitments, relationships, and communication. So I think we should go down that, right? And so when you talk about interest in real estate, and I'm going to be very biased in this episode, right? Because I'm talking about real estate from a broker's perspective, servicing their clients. So yeah, just a disclaimer. But with the interest, so that's the first thing probably everyone thinks about is like, what does the buyer and seller want? And I think that's just kind of like the outline or the cream on top, but the real inside of it is understanding the purpose. right? Because you want to make sure you're advising them effectively and understand why they're selling and why they're buying. It's like in the military, it's really like understanding the commander's intent and like what does that end state look like. And so when you understand that, you definitely can get more creative and really getting into the interest. On the contrary, or like maybe further understanding their interests, I always say, let's chase their objection. In negotiations, there's a famous book, right? Getting to Yes, right? I know you would understand. I like to put a twist on things, and I'm like, well, why don't we chase the objection? Really understanding why they won't sell or why they won't buy. And usually, when you chase the objection, it's more pre negotiations, like trying to get their business, so you can provide value to their interest. And simple examples, right? So for, let's say, a seller, right? A seller doesn't want to pay capital gains tax. So they don't want to sell right now because capital gains tax is based on short and long term, right? So that's a great interest, and you understand that there's a tax implication regarding that interest to not sell. Let's say another seller doesn't want to sell because they don't have a relationship with any of their people, right? And they're just going to die and go into probate, right? And so you're wondering like, oh, okay, that's why you don't want to say, even that's crazy, but these are actually real life examples. And the more you get into their interest and their objections, you really understand your industry and the product that much better. So, it's getting to yes, chasing the objection. So that's interest. So I know I can be long-winded, but
what I'm interested to jump into, Bryan, is kind of understanding how do we move beyond, or at least, from the outside looking in, how do we move from beyond just a haggle over prices when it comes to real estate? I know we had kind of talked a little bit about the principled agent, so maybe we collaborate that in here, but really getting at, can you even understand interest and generate options from an agent's perspective when buying a real estate?
Options are interesting. I always think options are an opportunity to be creative. It's if you understand the interest and you can derive to options, right? And to me, I think options in real estate are a synonym of concessions, because again, you're going to sell, but there's always how are you going to sell this, right? It's never black and white. So options in real estate, my understanding, are more concessions. So you're still trying to reach that decisive interest, right? Hey, I'm going to sell or I'm going to buy, but it's altered on just how you buy it or sell it. And so options and let's say selling, right? If you sell a property, let's say a house, there's probably stuff within the property that the buyer wants, right? So, you're going to reach the interest in selling the property, but an option is, hey, we'll sell it with all the real property in the building, right? And so that has a value both monetarily and emotionally and subjectively. Another one, let's say a buyer, right? Typical things in buyer's market is where a buyer will like, hey, I'll buy your house, but you need to pay all my closing costs. So that's very common. Or you need let's say you go under contract and the buyer wants inspection items to be taken care of, right? So they either fix it or provide a credit. So there's always options, and it's crazy that the more juicier the deal, right, the more creative the options can be.
Can we ask, put you on the spot here? And I'll give you a simple example, but I'd love to know if you got an example of a time where you were able to get really creative, working with a client, to kind of work a deal, maybe even, I don't know, one that was on the verge of not happening, but I'll give you my story real quickly. Just recently purchased, actually in the process of purchasing a rental property, and thank you. And the person that I'm working, the seller, we had to slide the closing is what we had to do because of tax implications. Again, we could have gotten really positional around this, but that was important, right? And being able to work there, able to in exchange work some different modifications we wanted done around painting and some flooring and stuff, but we don't have the time pressure because of anyways, they wanted to get out of the capital gains window, and we wanted some other things done. So just be able to have those conversations and then be able to get creative around it. Curious now to come back to you, because that wasn't a super creative solution. You've had any opportunity to get real creative at the table, even around real estate?
I can't recall right now, because I always feel like nothing's really creative, right? I feel like I'm just trying to get to the answer. I would say it's just really finding, if your client accepts, right, an offer, there's going to be other things they're going to have to accept down the line, and you've got to be able just to adjust fire to each one of those. Typical things that I've noticed, let's say in residential in this market, it's a seller's market. And so buyers are literally bottlenecked because there's no supply, high demand, and sellers are controlling it. So there's high price, and it's very hard because the bottleneck holds buyers up into buying a property, because they're on a time crunch and they need to buy something. And what's been really interesting in residential is I've been purchasing Airbnbs so that I can just fill that void for my clients, right? Because the thing is, you need to get these buyers to buy. If not, they're just going to take the alternative, and that's to rent. And so creatively, in order to sustain that, to keep my buyers in the fight, I've just provided housing. And so that's been that, and I'm in the negotiations, or the due diligence, and trying to find a hotel, so I can put my clients in there, so they can have the confidence that they're going to be able to buy in a timely manner. So that's been creative, but it's really interesting. I mean, I just do whatever it takes, and I just have so many things. I can't really pin it down, but I always just find a way.
Right. Well, that's a common path for alternatives, right? And I like how alternatives do several things for us, and your management of them, I feel, is pretty indicative, right? You're talking about how by understanding what the alternative is, you can talk about how, gee, that alternative doesn't really satisfy your interests, as well as continuing down the path of a sale or continuing down the path of a purchase. It also, as it reveals more around interests, helps us go back and, as you just said, come back and say, well, maybe we don't sell now, but we can lease to you with a plan to purchase down the road, which starts to get to another sort of creative option. So, it's a really, really interesting mix of it. And then again, it's a seller's market. It would seem that sellers have a lot more alternatives in terms of different buyers they could sell to. Are there ways that that you're seeing buyers distinguish themselves as a more attractive, option versus the other folks that they could sell to? There are things that are more appealing to potential sellers. I guess we're really talking about kind of residential sales. Maybe it applies to commercial. I don't know.
No, it's definitely not common, because it's an expense, right? It's a responsibility I have to hold, that hopefully there's a profit, but it's all about experience at the end for the client, right? And it creates that relationship. I think we're on a roll, and I think we keep going down that 7 element, right? And really talk about how that 7 element applies to my field. Alternatives, I generally like to stay away from them, because I feel that's just going towards the deal falling apart. Because once you start getting away from that decisive interest, like I'm going to buy or sell, I just feel like it just turns into something that never was intended. And in real estate, let's say I was going to buy and I can't buy, I'm just going to rent. That's the alternative. And I'm just like, well, now it's a leasing operation, and it's completely different, right? Or even a seller, right? When the seller wants to sell their property, but they can't sell it for whatever X reason. So the alternative is like, well, I'm just going to refinance. So I'm going to pull all my equity out, and I'm going to have a new principal, and then probably not sell, because he's already pulled out the equity. He's already at the height, right? So he's got his money. So the alternatives are stuff that I feel like you then start leading to your BATNA. And then that BATNA is what? The best alternative. And when you get into BATNA, and sir, you guys can tell me if I'm totally wrong, right? But the BATNA for me just is your ace up the sleeve for a threat, you know? And I just like, why are we getting there? And so, cause then it goes into, to threats. And so, I mean, if you look at it the opposite, you know, alternatives could lead to like keeping the deal alive, right? Because maybe they don't sell now, and then what they do is they lease, right, to the other client, to the buyer, and then they just buy later, right? You know, and so there's ways to I guess do a mix of both options and alternative, but I feel like you go down the road to threats.
So, Bryan, you have talked a little bit here. You've referenced this big deal that you just experienced. I'd love to hear a little bit. If you can tell us that story. I think so many times we think about real estate as kind of a single transaction, many negotiations, a single transaction. And this one sounds like what you're just describing. It was occurring over time, and all these, you know, need for strategy, need for patience, discipline, really put into practice. Are you willing to share? Are you able to share a little bit about what you just experienced and worked through?
Yeah. You know, I think that goes more into communication, right? And how are you communicating that buyer or that seller or the product or the service or the offer, right? Yes, that is incredibly important, because if you think about it from, you know, it depends on the seller. But if, let's say, the seller is open, right, is more just open to the offers, right? A seller will receive tons of offers. And so how do you really distinguish that offer from, let's say, 50 offers, right? And so there's a lot of legitimacy that goes in that, and really underwriting what that price is, and then providing terms, right? And the terms would have to satisfy the seller, but don't jeopardize the buyer either, right? Because, you know, seller's market is tough. It is tough. The buyers are, you know, becoming exhausted, and they feel like they're giving everything. So yeah, I mean, that's a great, you know, point, is like, how do you showcase your client and the offer? So right on there.
Hey everyone, Nolan here. Got to jump in and end the conversation right here. If you haven't already, please rate, review, and subscribe to the Negotiate X podcast. We'll greatly appreciate it, and we'll see you in the next episode. Hey, thanks for checking out this video on Negotiate X TV. If you found any value at all, please hit the subscribe button, hit the notification icon if you want to be notified of future videos. And then we also have a couple videos over here that you might be interested in checking out. If you and your small business, your team, are looking to get negotiations or leadership training, then you can head over to negotiatex.com and learn more about the coaching services we offer. Thanks, and I'll see you over in the next video.